Welcome all to more Warpstone. Today we're bringing you the official Total War Warhammer 3 head-to-head tier list. We've developed this tier list after several hundred hours of head-to-head gameplay and head-to-head brawling.
And if at all, throughout this video, you have any disagreements with or comments on our rankings, please make sure to write that down on a piece of paper and shove it up your ass because you're wrong. In all seriousness, we'd love to hear your thoughts and comments about the tier list down below and where you may differ from our rankings. Now let's get into the video. These rankings are obviously based off of our multiplayer campaigns that have the general rules of very hard campaign difficulty, easy battle difficulty to auto-resolve AI battles as to get to the PvP aspect as soon as possible, and to avoid the Doomstack meta, we only allow the first two tiers of Lightning Strike and a limited use of single entities.
All right, so let's get started with the Empire. My favorite faction.
Well, based on our criteria, I think the roster is pretty mid. I think their starting locations not really ideal, and I think their legendary lords also are kind of mid. I'd say they should be in C tier.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think their roster, though, is pretty diverse, but
it's diverse and fun to use, but unfortunately, this tier list is not based off of how fun they are to play, so can't justify going over C tier.
Here's an interesting one. I would say Bretonnia is also C tier. They have great cavalry, but their overall roster is that. It's pretty much just cav. Their infantry suck.
Yeah.
Their archers suck.
Their the biggest pluses for Bretonnia are the lords are pretty darn amazing. Their economy is good, and their starting location is really good. It's the roster that's not as diverse as it could be, which kind of marks points down for it in like a multiplayer setting because it's easier to counter a lot of their armies when their armies aren't as diverse as some other factions that we're going to talk about.
Exactly, and it's really important to note that this is a head-to-head tier list, and because Bretonnia's roster is so limited to just cav, other human players will know how to counter Bretonnia. Just bring halberds and you're screwed. I will say, though, Lewin Leon Kerr is an absolute god on the battlefield. Insane.
Yeah, he's great.
So that brings us to the dwarves, baby. What are the dwarves at? S tier.
Yeah, no, seriously, S tier, yeah. But against the AI, you could say the dwarves are actually pretty decent. They have good units, their economy's not too bad, they have fine starting locations, and their lords are pretty good. But in a multiplayer setting, speed is so important in multiplayer battles. Speed kills. The dwarves just are so slow that they're able to be their vanguard units on the edge will be able to pick off easily. Oh, yeah. It's hard to rush your opponent with them, and they can just get kited so easily by fast missile units that they're really they're lacking in the multiplayer department.
Yeah, no disagreements from me here. As much as I love dwarves and their playstyle, it's just not good in a head-to-head. They're really vulnerable. So they are going into D tier. So up next we have the vampire counts. And I know I said Empire was probably my favorite faction, but across all three Warhammers, I think it's actually the vampire counts. Their roster, while isn't amazing, they have a lot of really good units such as Blood Knights, which are fantastic. But what really sets Sylvania aside from everyone and what makes them so good is the raised dead ability. It is insane. I mean, in this example, they lost one unit when it said they were going to lose like 10. Incredible. So when you're attacking, your army just doesn't die, regardless of the losses that it says you're going to take. Their start positions are pretty solid, especially for someone like Vlad von Karstein. That's really good. Helm Gorst, pretty solid. I mean, really, their start positions are fine. But I want to double down and say that their raised dead ability, coupled with insanely good lords in Vlad von Karstein, Helm Gorst, they're just easily A tier. Great faction. So up next is Norska, and I've had some horrifically terrible experiences with Norska. So for me, they're going into the D tier.
See, I mean, I know what you're talking about, but you have to give them another shot now in Warhammer 3.
No, they suck.
They have been improved, really. Their economy is actually great now. Their coastal settlements give you so much money. The roster, although it's not crazy good, it's still pretty darn good. And they have a good play style for head-to-head campaigns. They expand quickly, and they are very fast on the battlefield. So, and their starting location, like, besides...
What would you put them at?
With the starting location, with the roster being pretty good, the economy amazing, and their lords being good, I would honestly have them in B tier. Like they're not
In B
one of the
tier?
top echelons of factions for multiplayer campaigns, but they're a lot better than they were in Warhammer 2, and they're definitely serviceable now. Like they are fun to play as, but they're good.
The reason that I'm putting them that I'll capitulate and put them in B is the fact that they can settle chaos waste is
Oh, yep,
huge. I
that's
mean,
another big one. That's another big one. Yep.
so that's big. That's fine. I just think their roster is terrible.
I played a lot of Beastmen, and after the update, and although they're a little worse than they were in Warhammer 2, they're still great. They're great in single player. They're great in multiplayer. You have to give them A. They have the biggest thing that's a knock against them is the caps that they could get for how many units they could get. But the fact that they could expand so quickly and defend their blood ground regions so easily is amazing. Yes, the garrisons are worse now, but they're still making a lot of money. Their lords are absolutely fantastic, especially Malagor and Torax the Brass Bull. They're a force to be reckoned with in multiplayer campaigns for sure.
Okay, so up next is the Wood Elves, and this is a faction that I played as
Yep.
extensively, easily S tier 100%.
Yeah.
And they have amazing everything, but the thing that sets them apart is the World Roots system. World Roots is an amazing ability when it comes to head-to-head campaigns. If you're in trouble or one of your many trees are in trouble, you could just teleport an insane army to come reinforce it. Or if you're in trouble at, you know, wherever, Orion's camp, and you got to get out of there, then just go right back to, some other legendary tree.
Yeah,
or
I mean,
whatever.
their roster is great, especially the multiplayer campaign. They're quick and they're very heavy damage dealing. Their economy is okay, and their lords are okay, but and their starting locations are okay. However, like you said, the world roots is what vaults them into S. To be able to have reinforcing armies, to be able to expand in all these different areas of the map, it's just really powerful. It's a really powerful thing, and it's something that your opponents it's hard to compete with that when you have teleporting lords. And you'll see a common theme with teleporting lords. They're just overpowered in multiplayer campaigns. All right, so for the green skins now, I think we both know where they're going.
Yeah, this faction is just top S tier for sure.
Yeah.
They're honestly in a category of their own. They're completely unreal. Their abilities, in terms of roster, amazing. Economy, amazing. Starting position, no complaints. Lords, overall, amazing. But it doesn't end there. It's the ability to wog within the first 10 to 12 turns is insane. You're literally doubling your armies.
Yeah, exactly. You said it. I mean, they're a good faction. They're a good faction normally, but being able to wah and being able to confederate other lords pretty easily, you expand so quickly, which is so important in multiplayer campaigns. Multiplayer campaigns are won in the early rounds. If you could have a really big growth, advantage on your opponent in the early rounds, that pays dividends in the later part of the campaign. So I know the early rounds
Absolutely.
are not too exciting and stuff like that, but for them to be able to expand so quickly and just become such a big force so early, it's just really unfair to go against them.
No, yeah, I totally agree. Greenskins are amazing. But that now brings up the Warriors of Chaos, and dear Lord, do I have PTSD from these guys.
Yeah, after Archeon just gave Carl the old beatdown. Yeah, so you went against them. What do you think that the Warriors of Chaos are ranked?
So I'd be hesitant to put them in S normally, but the fact that it covers such a broad range of lords, like if we were focusing on Archeon specifically, I would put him in A because I think he's really, really good, but not to the same level as like the Greenskins or even the Wood Elves. But the fact that it contains another Lord, Bellicor, who can teleport, and as we know, teleportation is just insane. I mean, the Chaos Warriors were fringe S tier anyway, but the fact that Bellicor can teleport, it's amazing.
The roster is great. Their economy is great. Their starting location is insane. It's so hard to go up in there and attack them. And their lords are some of the best in the game. The biggest detriment to the Warriors of Chaos is if it's a very, very long campaign and your opponent's across the map and they're able to develop a really good big empire, because then they'll be able to recruit a lot better armies than you are, because you still have to rely on the warband recruitment. However, that's a very small percentage of situations, and in the vast majority of situations, the Warriors of Chaos are just such a strong faction in single player and multiplayer.
absolutely. And so that brings us
F
to
tier. They suck.
I,
They're the worst
I
faction in the
think
game.
I think this is your favorite faction, right?
It is. It is. I love the High Elves. I know it's pretty basic, but I just love how they play. They're so good. I mean,
So where's your boys going?
well, yeah, they're good, but they're not S tier. They're not S tier. I don't think they're as good as the Greenskins, the Wood Elves, or the Warriors of Chaos, but they are A. Because and the reason is they do everything great, but nothing the best. Their roster is amazing, but it's not the greatest roster in the game. Their lords are amazing, but they're not the greatest lords in the game. Their starting okay, actually, never mind. Their starting location is the best starting location in the game. Like Attain,
Yeah, it's
you get
pretty good.
so much money, so much defense. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and but they don't have any like super unfair abilities like teleportation with the Wood Elves, the Wa with the Greenskins, or Warriors of Chaos, Be'lakor teleporting, or just how insanely powerful they are at the beginning. They don't have any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have any of that. So although they're amazing, they're my favorite faction because they're amazing and it feels still right. You know, it doesn't feel like you're doing anything super unfair.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Sylvania and the High Elves are definitely on par with each other. Um, so the next faction we've got is the Dark Elves here, and I think I've actually played more of the Dark Elves than you have, Kyle. But if it was up to me, I would put them in A tier as well. I don't like them that much, I'll be honest. They're not that fun to play. But the reason that I would personally put them into A tier, I mean, we look at their roster, it's solid all around. The economy is great with their slave system. Starting positions, especially you look at someone like Lokir Fellheart or, I mean, really any of their lords, they're all in great positions. And then their lords themselves are really solid. I don't know if they're better than the High Elf lords, but they're good. I would put them in A tier, especially when you consider the
Oh,
Black
Black Ark.
Arcs. Yeah. But the Black Arcs as well are amazing, and I don't think they can be underestimated. They're really, really, really good. I would put them at A tier.
I'd say you could make an argument for A tier, which you just did, which makes sense, but I don't know. I lean more towards B because they're definitely not as good as the High Elves, the Beastmen, or the Vampire Counts. But I could see them in low A tier because yes, the Black Arcs are a very good thing to have in multiplayer campaigns.
They're amazing. Yeah, I think we'll leave them low A tier. I think that's probably a good placement. Okay, so up next is the Lizardmen, and this one's kind of a tough one. I have mixed feelings about the Lizardmen. They have some really good units. I'm thinking of like the Carnosaurs. Um, Definitely a pretty good roster overall. Their economy is okay. I would say it's just okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Their development takes a little bit of time, though. It's not quick,
And
and
honestly, I don't think they get very powerful until they get developed. I think they take a huge leap with the tier 4 and tier 5 units. So
yeah,
I'm leaning towards C because I don't think they're as good as the I don't know. B is actually a
of
decent spot.
Norska.
I
No,
don't think
I
they're as
definitely think they're B. Yeah,
I think they're definitely better than the Empire and Bretonia. So I
Bretonian.
think B is a good
Yeah.
spot for them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Also, we can't forget Lord Croak and his insane power. I mean, he's
Yeah, that's
amazing.
true. That is true.
The next up is the Dreadfleet and Vampire Coast. I haven't played with them a ton, despite loving vampires.
So yeah, and I've played a bit with them. I've played I played a bit with them, but honestly, not a ton either. I don't think they're too powerful. I'm thinking hovering around C tier for them because although they're fun to use, they don't really have a great roster for multiplayer settings. Their missiles are slow and very squishy, and that's a lot of their balance of power just taken out by a good multiplayer player that uses cav
Hmm.
effectively. So, but
Exactly.
honestly, my mind could change about them because I don't have a ton of experience with them. I really would love to hear what the viewers think in the comments that have played more Vampire Coast than me.
I'm gonna put them. I'm gonna put them at what, D tier? Are we thinking D tier?
Yeah, yeah, they haven't really done it for me yet. But again, I could be wrong.
The the Dead Rise again is good, but I just think that, yeah, I mean, as we talked about in head-to-head campaigns, missile units being your primary focus is is not good in head-to-heads like you described. You just get shredded when those are your best units. You are our Tomb King player, Kyle. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the Tomb Kings?
If this was a rankings based on how much fun you have playing them, I think they'd be A tier for sure. I love them. They're fun. They are an interesting faction. They have interesting mechanics. but they're like kind of like the definition of mid. Their starting location is mid. Even Cetra's just in the middle of everything in the Southlands there.
Mm-hmm.
Their
So
roster is pretty mid, although fun to use. Their economy's mid, and their lords are pretty mid. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with C tier there. They're mid in single player, they're mid in multiplayer, fun to use, but not super effective. Especially when
yeah,
they
I
have the
just
army caps. You have a cap on how many armies you could get. That really starts to affect you in late game as the Tomb Kings.
yeah, that's a huge detriment for the Tomb Kings in late game. Next up, we have the channel's namesake in the Skaven. But really, I think we just mean Clan Scryer, right? Let's just assume that this is Clan Scryer.
Yeah,
when we think
if you're
when we
playing
think
if
Skaven,
you're playing as Clan Scryer on the single player map, they are so good, so good. Honestly, they're good for any of the factions you play. But
for sure.
multiplayer, it's just a different game. Their weapons teams are way less effective against a human player because the human players are just smarter and they're able to flank a lot better than AI can.
Hmm.
But then again, they still have the ability for stock stands and to just
Well,
ambush on
and
a
their
regular
ability
attack.
to and to call up the clan rats
hmm
whenever
hmm
is
So they're
amazing.
still not
So
awful. They're still not awful, but they're weakened. They're weakened in a multiplayer setting. So I think around B tier is a good place for them. They're still a great faction, but because they're going against a
mhm.
human, they're just at more of a disadvantage.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to win with weapons teams. You're going to have to actually rely a lot on
Yeah.
storm vermin,
Yeah.
which you won't normally hear people say too often.
Yeah.
Okay, we
but
next.
but one last thing before we move on. Skaven against dwarves would total S tier faction. Skaven against
Oh,
wood elves
for
or something
sure.
like that, or Bretonia, F tier. That's why I think
Yeah,
B is a good middle ground for them.
yeah, they'd have a tough time in either of those matchups. So Corn is a tough one. We've both played Corn extensively, and we have very different opinions on Corn.
Yeah. I'll let you go
I'll go
first. Yeah, I'll
first.
let you go first
I'll
here.
go first. If it was up to me, I would put them in D tier. And I have mixed feelings about that because they can be so incredibly strong. Their ability to rush early game and just be on the constant warpath. If you're not ready for that, as some one of these other factions, you're going to be screwed for sure. But if this is a long-term campaign and you're far away from your opponent, good luck. Your empire will crumble down over time when you are no longer having these armies around. You can't attack in all directions. You have to focus on the human player, otherwise you will die. For me, that puts him in D tier.
Yeah, I mean, I get those points 100%, but again, and I guess I'm just repeating myself here with the situational line, but it is situational. Let's say you have a corn matchup against someone and they picked a faction that's pretty close to you. There is no stronger faction than corn really early game,
With the
bar
exception of the
maybe the greenskins.
Greenskins.
Yes.
Yeah.
If let's say I'm playing as Corn and you're playing as the Empire, I have no doubt in my mind Corn would just wipe the floor with the Empire. They could just rush so quickly and their blood
Yeah.
hosts are so good. They get bloodthirsters in those and they expand at such a rapid rate that
Yeah.
early game
They don't have it.
is so
Yeah.
hard to stop them. However, late game, if you're able to bring Corn to the very far late game and the same thing that I said with the Greenskins, it's a very big similar situation. Late game, if you're going against a really developed nation with amazing Doomstack level armies, Corn will struggle because their economy is not as good as, let's say, High Elves or Cathay.
No, for sure. I'm willing to put them maybe in the B or C range. I think probably B, given their strength early game is so unmatched. But I would hesitate to put them any higher than that, given the limitations of long term.
Yeah, I I I could capitulate, and I think in situations it could be S. In some situations, yeah, it could be even C or D. So I'll settle with
Hmm.
B.
So the next we have Zinch, and I've played Zinch a decentish amount, and I can say that from a head-to-head experience, you don't get to use changing the ways as much as you might otherwise like to. It's not as impactful as you might hope, and then doing big actions like transferring settlements is extremely expensive. You don't get to do it as much as you might think. Their roster is okay, but they have a really tough starting position, squished between basically all the factions that hate you.
Mm.
So I think that I don't think they're very high up here. I think they're a D.
Yeah, I mean, Sadly, I'm probably agreeing with you here. I'm thinking maybe we could justify C tier, because they do have some unique tools to them, and Chaos factions in Warhammer 3 are just in general just pretty darn good. So some situations they could be C, but yeah, they're pretty against the human player. They are not as effective as single player at all.
Yeah, I could put them in C. I think that they're on par with these factions for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
But yeah. The next is Slanesh, and this is a faction that I don't think gets played very much, honestly. Um, from what my experiences have been with them, they're pretty good. They're pretty solid. They have a lot of really fast, interesting units. So their roster is good. Their economy is okay. Their starting position's a little tough though, being tossed out there on the donut against a bunch of high
yeah.
elf
But if you could,
factions.
if you consolidate, fuck. But if you consolidate the donut, it's a pretty good defensible position to have there. You cannot rank them though alongside the Skaven or Khorne or the World Walkers or sorry Norska. They're not that good, but they're also not that bad. They're no dwarf. I would say another C placement. All right, so
Yeah.
for Nurgle, I think this is gonna be our first F. Yeah, I mean, so Nurgle going into Warhammer 3 when this was announced, I was super excited for Nurgle. I thought, oh, that's such a
I think
cool,
everybody
unique, yeah, it's
was.
such a cool, unique thing. But they just need some more love. Their roster is very, very bare bones right now, and it's not too good. Their economy's their legendary lord and Kugath he's good. He's nothing to write home about. And their starting location, it's cool and it could be good, but also it's pretty vulnerable. You could attack all your first starting settlements, which are your most important settlements that get developed the fastest. You could attack them all
Mhm.
by water. They could be very
Yeah, yeah.
vulnerable there. And so, like, they're slow on the battlefield, very slow. Which obviously
Extremely
we already
slow.
talked about. That's such a big negative. Yeah,
Mhm.
they're not very. I would be pretty confident with going against Nurgle with pretty much any faction. So
Next up is Demons of Chaos, and this is a faction that I've played and I also think is F tier. It sounds super appealing, being able to use all four of the chaos, being chaos undivided.
yeah,
When in reality, they just get all the crap, and you ultimately have to go down one path anyway for it to really be viable. Um, they're just not that good. They're also cast up in the north where everybody hates them or they're at war with everybody. It's just not very good. It's not a very good faction. Their legendary lord, oh, you get different body parts. It just doesn't work out the way that you'd want,
no,
and they're just not.
he's not as strong as he could be or should be. And but
No,
I'm actually very curious to see what other people think of this as well because I have not played them too much, and I'm curious to see if they could actually be viable. So
yeah. So ogre kingdoms,
Ogre
ogre
Kingdoms.
kingdoms, they're they're really interesting. I think that they're probably a solid B or A tier faction. I mean, their cavalry is amazing. They get
Yeah.
the amazing
So
cavalry.
for roster, high ranks for the roster. They have a great roster. Economy
Yeah,
also very high ranks. Their economy is insane. And starting location, it's not
it's a
too
little tough.
yeah, but it's not too dangerous. I know Greasus is near Grimgor there, which is a little tough. But
Scrag,
Scrags, yeah, but I think they could compete with all the lords around them. So I think their starting location is not that bad, and their lords are good. But
they
they're
are.
not, they're not crazy, crazy. So I think that you kind of are right there with B. They could do a lot of things. Their camps are very powerful in a multiplayer setting. I mean, to be able to pace settlements, wherever you want in a multiplayer setting,
Hmm.
that's very good.
It's really good, really
So I
good.
think
Yeah.
because of that, I think B tier is a good spot for them.
Okay, so next up is Kislev, and Kislev is one of my favorite factions. I have several, but Kislev's up there. I've played it extensively. Based on roster alone, I would put them in an A. Their roster's fantastic. Warbear Riders,
Yeah, not a
amazing,
lot of holes.
amazing
Not a lot of
units.
holes on their roster in a multiplayer setting at all. No, but
Definitely not.
but
But
they're
but their
showing up.
starting position is awful.
It's so
Easily one of the
they're just
worst.
too vulnerable. I mean, if they
They're
were tucked in the
they
corner of the map, I would rank them higher. But when you're going against a human and you have so many AI factions attacking you and splitting up your forces, it's a big detriment.
mhm. It's a huge detriment because you have to campaign north against the Chaos Waste. That's land that you don't even want to capture. It's red territory to Kislev, but they have to because they're the bastion between them and the soft underbelly of the Empire. But just the same, they also have to campaign south when you're playing against someone like Tyrion, and me and Riggs actually had a campaign High Elves versus Kislev. Didn't go too well for Kislev.
I mean, because I was able, in bar the High Elves being great, I was able to focus solely on you as the High Elves versus Kislev. But when you were trying to focus on me, you had Norska, Warriors of Chaos, Greenskins, all these factions attacking you, and you just had to split your forces, and it was just not a good time.
You're gonna have a bad time.
All right,
But
for the final race on our list here, Cathay.
Oh my god, another one of my favorite factions. Any human faction, instantly one of my favorite.
Yeah.
So this is Cathay.
So roster, first of all, roster, good,
solid,
not great. Good,
yeah,
not amazing.
Yeah. If I was basing it off their roster, I would put them at a B. I think there's definitely some holes there, but it's not terrible.
But economy, starting location.
The economy and starting location. Their economy is probably the best economy in the game.
One of, yeah.
It's insane. I mean, your ability to field so many armies, it's unreal.
Yeah.
And these are solid armies. These aren't crap armies. These are solid. Their starting position, amazing. You're just walled off from the rest of the world. You kill some Skaven, a couple Dark Elves. Your whole northern border's guarded by the Great Wall of China. I mean, it's incredible. And then their lords, especially the Iron Dragon and Zhao Ming, amazing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put them in A tier. They're really, really solid faction.
Honestly, this kind of pains me because I think I might agree with you. I think every faction there in B tier was higher and better than Cathay in a single player setting, but multiplayer, it's just a different game, and they could be, like you said, their starting location and their economy are so good. If you're going against Cathay late game, it's a hard faction to go against late game just because of how many armies they could field. So
about that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say it's lower A tier. But I think a later, long-term campaign, Cathay could have a better matchup against those factions we have in B there. So, all right, well, there we have it. The definitive, official Total War Warhammer 3 head-to-head race tier list. This is obviously our opinions after our many campaigns playing this game. And like I said many times, multiplayer campaigns are very situational. So if you have any thoughts, comments, different experiences, or disagreements with the tier list, please let us know in the comments. We'd love to have a discussion. So anyway, thanks for watching this far, and as always, this has been more Warpstone. Yes?